Given that education is considered to be upstream of culture, one way to evaluate the success of the education is to see what kind of society it creates. So I took a cursory look to see on some key metrics, how does US society compare to Indian society? And I want to just share some of the figures that I found out because they were really surprising to me.
Oh, wonderful.
I found that the US has a much higher crime rate compared to India per thousand population, much higher rape statistics, greater family breakdowns. In fact, 23% of US children live in single-parent households, and that's compared to a world average of 7%, so more than 3 times. And whereas India came in at 4%, so 6 times less than the US.
So let's just clarify, if you don't mind. I want to make sure I didn't miss that. What you're saying is almost a quarter of American children are growing up in single-parent families.
That's right, according to these numbers.
No wonder there is so much stress and emotional distress arising.
Well, talking about stress, let's look at mental health. World Health Organization ranked the US as second highest for depression, only topped by Ukraine.
My goodness.
So presumably, if there wasn't a war going on, the US would be the most depressed country in the world. And India came all the way down at 81. So hardly a successful track record for India to emulate. And the question to ask is, would bringing in more Western education portend a similar fate for Indian society somewhere down the road?
Well, it's a very, very worrying set of statistics, Navita, and I appreciate you digging them up. If I want to employ a builder, I go and see a house that he's constructed. If somebody is saying to me, this is the way in which we should decorate your premises, we go and see their work elsewhere. And a society, I think, reflects the educational principles which are used to nurture individuals and to guide individuals. The values of a society, we have them given to us, we receive them during our years of education. And from what you're saying, and it's probably reflected in the state of the American society, is that we have been producing imbalanced people who have very powerful heads, but unbelievably unstable hearts, very highly educated, emotionally unstable people whose characters have not yet formed. And I think that's consistent with the America that we're seeing. We are seeing a nation which is not at peace with itself. It's not at peace with itself. There is such societal strife amongst all the communities, and it's not at peace with the world either. The history of America is one of continuous wars. I don't think there is any nation which has engaged in so many wars over such a long period of time across the globe as the United States has, followed closely by the Oxford-guided United Kingdom. So there is a very serious issue here also, and I do think that the statistics that you've presented, they warrant urgent reviews of what it is we're going to allow them to do, what it is we're going to bring them over to Bharat to be able to influence. They will have a dramatic influence, of that there is no doubt. But if their influence in the United States is that they have been largely responsible for such a polarized society, and when I say polarized, it's not just in terms of wealth, it's not in terms of asset distribution, it's also in terms of racial polarization. 80%, I think, I read a statistic that 80% of all of the prison population is African American origin. There is something systemically wrong there. How does that happen? And so there are many, many areas of polarization and conflict in the American society. And I would have felt so much more comfortable if these universities and establishments were going to come to Bharat and say, look, we have got an incredible society. We have participated and achieved equality of opportunity and of achievement and of attainment. Look at all these incredible demographics and statistics. Then we'd all be saying, oh, wonderful, let's learn from them. But I don't think that's what they're bringing. They haven't proven it themselves. And the last thing we want is for Bharat to become yet another testing ground for colonialist ideas which have not brought peace, happiness, harmony, and have not brought equality, have created suffering. it's a little bit, it reminds me a little bit of the recent history of the testing of drugs on indigenous populations. I think the Bill Gates health initiatives, they introduced a polio vaccine into Bharat, and it resulted in a great many of deaths and had to be withdrawn immediately. It wasn't introduced into a white Euro-Christian population. It was introduced here, and similar experiences have happened in Africa. What we don't want is a monopolist or a colonialist entity introducing similar experimental ideologies into Bharat, when Bharat has had 5,000 years of incredible civilization, which created Sone ki Chidiya, which managed to see into the secrets of astrology, astronomy, the universe, health, yoga, herbs with Ayurveda. The mountain of knowledge that we managed to produce is an indication of the educational systems that were in Bharat. I read very recently that when the British came to Bharat, the Europeans came, there were 732,000 educational institutions up and down the country already, long before the first school was established in England. So we have a lot to teach. I'm not convinced that we have quite so much to learn, but these are very worrying statistics, and they do warrant further investigation.
Please remember to subscribe to us and switch on the notifications for this channel. For our other social media links, more content, and to support our work, please visit citti.net. Dhanyavad. Namaskar.